Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of That Spiritual Girl Next Door. I am speaking with Alex Marcoux today, and I give her bio in a moment when we start our conversation. But I just hung up with her and wanted to film this introduction just because I am so excited about the information. I want you to listen to it with an open mind and an open heart. And as we say in the episode, if the information doesn't resonate with you, you can leave it and know that your sovereign resonance to what we're talking about is your prerogative. But I think some of these concepts will be new to people. Um, just as I've heard people say, and I like this phrase, just walk with me for a minute and suspend disbelief and suspend your skepticism and listen to what she's saying as truth and try it on for size and see how it feels within you and in your heart. If it's something that you want to learn more about, she's got other interviews that are fantastic, but also really check out some of her work. And I'm going to leave her Amazon link in the show notes because she's got a plethora of books and she meets you where you're at. And I think maybe it's something that really could open your eyes to a whole new world. And ultimately, it can turn you into a superhero and help change the world energetically. I'll leave you with that as a little teaser and see what that means. But please join us for the show. Thanks for being here. Today, we have Alex Marcoux, who is a multi award winning author. She's renowned for her work in visionary fiction and spirituality. Her journey began with a career in food science and technology, but she eventually found her true calling in writing. Marcoux has delved into the sacred mysteries of autism, uncovering profound connections to humanity's spiritual evolution. The exploration has significantly influenced her recent works, including Destination New Earth, a blueprint to 5D consciousness, and The Unsuspected Heroes, a visionary fiction novel. Her literary contributions have earned her numerous accolades, such as the 2004 Best Book Awards finalist for Gods in the Game, which we're going to talk about more today. And her dedication to uncovering hidden truths and her collaborations with non speaking autistic individuals have positioned her as a distinctive voice in both fiction and nonfiction realms. And I told Alex, I don't normally read bios, but that just helps sum up labels are really hard because you are so many things, and that helps put it in a little box. But thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for welcoming me here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier that you are in a little bit of a transition time in your life, and we're all get stuck in the 3D. So we're trying to put our gods in the game hats back on and jump back into the ethereal today.
I'm trying my best. Yeah, I was just sharing that with Kelly that I've recently moved, and yeah, this we do have to navigate this thing called 3D reality and this being on Earth.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and that's a good segue to me wanting to kick off talking about these concepts in the book are so profound and deep that taking the nuggets and making sure we can apply them in our 3D reality is the game.
Hmm.
And I wanted to talk about your background because if you start off way back to when you were a food scientist, that is a far cry to a novelist on ethereal reality and autism and all these things. These subjects are far cry. So can you walk us through a little bit about how you found your divine blueprint, kind of what that means, and how you've maintained that through all these different steps and breadcrumbs throughout your life?
Okay, well, that's a really long, that would be a
Yes.
really long response. So,
Sorry.
no, it's okay.
You
Let's
can Reader's Digest version it for us.
Reader's Digest version. Yeah, I
Well,
wasn't.
particularly, okay, I don't mean to
Okay.
interrupt you, but if we're talking about it being too long, I really was interested in your out of body experience when I listened to
Okay.
another podcast. You just mention it and then just sort of gloss over it. And I'm like, no, 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 go back. I want to hear more.
Well, they can read about it, right? Uh, so yeah, actually, that was a real awakening for me because before that, I was raised Catholic, and I have a really significant Catholic background, and I was a scientist by education, and yes, I was a food scientist, and I've worked for the food industry as well as the tobacco industry. I've had many lives, I think. Uh, so I found myself. It was in the early '90s. I had recently moved to Colorado, And I had this out of body experience. But before that, I would be one of these people who would roll their eyes when anything woo woo would come up. And I have to say, I was really good at it. And, for me, I had to make sure that, uh, it went past the scientific system, right? So that experience just shook me up. And I had to look at my life and I realized that, what I had been educated, what I was taught as a child, particularly regarding religious programming, wasn't really the truth. And that was really the beginning of my spiritual journey. And did you want me to delve into what
If you're
actually?
open to telling us, how did you have an out of body experience? Because
It,
that's
okay, so I was aware what they supposedly were,
right.
and I was in bed, and I thought I was dreaming, and I essentially floated out of my body, and I thought it was a dream, and I saw that I was laying down next to my partner. And I was looking down at myself and I thought, oh, this is one of those out of body experiences, right? Uh, and with that thought, anytime I would think something, I would do something almost instantaneously. And I thought, well, let me take a look around. And the next thing I know, I was floating out into my house. I was looking over a banister I had the Christmas lights on the fireplace mantle. It was a multi-level home with an open balcony. I looked down at what would be a closet with other lights on it. And I thought, well, I wonder what would happen if I inched over the banister. Would I fall on my face? And as I was thinking that, I floated over the banister and I floated down to the front door. And I looked at the front door and I thought, oh, yeah, this can't really be happening. It's got to be a dream. Well, let me open the door. I'm going to leave it unlocked. I'm going to go out into the night. And I did. I went out into the night. I had my experience. At the time, I was living in a house that overlooked Denver, so I could see Denver from the mountains. And I went into the mountains. Well, in the morning when I woke up, I had my experience. In the morning when I woke up, my partner said, "Well, what's going on?" Because I woke up really fast, and I just said, "I just had the oddest dream." I explained what happened. She just got out of bed. She went downstairs. She was doing something, came back to bed, and she didn't say anything. She just laid there. And I said, "Well, what's going on?" She goes, "Well, I just went downstairs and the front door was unlocked." And so she confirmed that what I dreamt was somehow affecting the physical.
And that's, to me, the experience, first of all, is amazing. But the fact that you were able to interact with the physical is super unique.
I
I
think
mean, you're people that would always lock their front door.
yes, and yeah, I would. I think it was because I was so in the physical. I was so science. I needed to really be shaken up.
Well, I mean, Catholicism and working for the tobacco industry is probably the most 3D thing I've ever heard. So to your point, if your
Yeah,
divine blueprint is to be where you are, which it certainly is, and accomplishing what you're doing right now, you
yeah.
had to have that experience.
Yes, I did. And you mentioned the divine blueprint, and I could get the books get very much into it. There are two books that get into it, but
Mhm.
um, I just like to say it's simply what we're supposed to do while we're here, and each of us has a unique divine blueprint. And I think one of the things I'm to do while I'm here is to reveal these hidden truths to humanity. And, I mentioned I've got four what I would call spiritual based books, but before I started writing these, um, I was writing fiction, and I didn't know at the time what I was doing, but I was relaying these truths in fiction because one of the things that I think I'm supposed to do, again, is to reveal truths. One of my gifts has been to take a look at reality and the things that I'm being taught. And I've learned that things either have resonance, or they fall flat.
Hmm.
And so when things fall flat, and I'm being taught that, those are the things that I tried to explore in my earlier works of fiction, which might have to do with, equality within humanity, with past lives, with conspiracy theories, with secret societies, things that as a child, they felt like I felt like I wasn't being told the truth.
Hmm. And so
And
you could explore what that truth was in resonance in your
yeah,
fiction.
that's right. It's not, and it wasn't like I was necessarily believing a lot of the things I was writing, particularly my conspiracy novel, which is a matter of degrees. It's not like I could say I was on board with what I wrote, but I learned years later that that's a code book, and
Mm.
it is absolutely a lot of the concepts that were introduced in that book. Uh, they're real.
Well, and talk about breadcrumbs, starting there with fiction and knowing that this is the way humanity is ready to receive this information is brilliant. And then, trickling it down to once you started working with the Ethereal Autists in 2011 is when you were introduced, I think. But I want to talk about how that all happened. But then now you've evolved to writing works of nonfiction like Gods in the Game and the New Earth. So
Destination New Earth. Yeah.
Destination New Earth. So, I mean, I think it's remarkable that you are taking a front seat to watching humanity's evolution, and possibly part of it is your own, which we're all a reflection of the collective in a sense sometimes, right? So maybe you're also ready to sort of be the one that's stating these ideas as your not as your own. It's a co-creation process, but you're what did you call yourself? Not the you had a funny
Original.
phrase.
I have a funny phrase. I call myself the rude mechanic.
That's it. That was it. The rude mechanic. You're putting it all together. You're fixing the engine.
Yeah, I
That's
don't.
right. I'm glad you picked up what I was putting down. I'm drawing a blank here on that podcast I listened to of you.
Okay.
But the so let's talk about how you met Daniel and Connie and was Shauna a friend of yours first? Is that how that
No,
happened? No?
no, not at all. Actually, let's see. I actually met the autist kind of reached out to me through Gail and Lyrica. Gail and Lyrica, they have a book called Autism, A Hidden Key to Your Spiritual Magnificence. And they reached out to me back in 2011. And it was a mother daughter team trying to get their book published. And for some odd reason, they they saw a book trailer I had done on one of my earlier books that was being released, and they wanted me to do their book trailer. And I didn't do it for a living, but oddly enough, I had just been laid off. I had the time. And so I went and I said, okay, I'll do it, but no problem, send me the book. And they were a little hesitant about initially about sending the book, and they said, "You gonna read it?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. How am I supposed to do a book trailer? We didn't have AI back then."
Right.
So, essentially, I was reading the book, and it's a very interesting story. If you don't mind, I was at night I would read before I would get ready for meditation. So I'd read, and I was reading their book, and I set the book on my bed, and I was in a sitting area, meditation area. Came back to the my chair. I sat down, closed myself off from the rest of the household, and as I was going into meditation, I heard this crash in the room, and I looked down at my feet, And their book, which had been on my bed, somehow managed to fall in front of my feet. And it was kind of like, oh, well, I think I'm supposed to pay attention to this book. So the book just, I have this stuff about knowing when something resonates, and a lot of the stuff that they were saying really is out of this world, but it resonated. And so I ended up doing their book trailer. And then after I did their book trailer, they asked if I would help them move their book into the world. And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? And so they said, whatever your skill set you have, And I wrote web content, and I'm a search engine person, search engine
We
optimization.
have that in common. I
Oh,
was a SEO marketer and built web content. So when you were
right.
explaining that part of your 3D life, that resonates with me as well.
Oh, well, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. Well, that's very cool.
But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
So
no,
yes,
no, please do.
you're doing their marketing for this book and getting it out there.
So yeah, so as I'm doing that and I'm interacting with these people, since I did the SEO, the great part is that Connie, found their website, through my work. And Connie
Okay.
is the mother of Daniel. Daniel is what we call an ethereal autist. And so they came into the fold for being friends with Gail and Lyrica, as well as other autistics. But there were three autistics that really, we developed a friendship, and we would get together and we would have, it was just magical seeing these autistics be together in one place with their parents. And so that's how I met Connie and Daniel at one of these gatherings with Gail Lyrica and one of the autists called Layla.
Okay.
And and so at some point, yes, the three of them asked if I would. Well, actually, it was Gail, the mother of Lyrica, asked if I would write their story. And initially I said no. And a year later, they asked if I would write their story. And I noticed that my life had become very unmanageable in a way. Like the projects that were important to me and I'm working on, they weren't taking off. So I agreed to write. I told them, I said, when the truth is stranger than fiction, I think what we need to do is introduce it in fiction because it's safer and it'll hit the person wherever they're at. And if they read it and it resonates with them, they'll go, oh my God, this is truth, and they'll recognize it. Uh, but if it's fiction, if it doesn't resonate with them, it's okay. And they can read it as a story, and maybe, just maybe, it'll plant a seed. And maybe one day those seeds will sprout. And that was my work.
And that was Unsuspected Heroes.
That was the unsuspected heroes, right? And
I haven't read that one yet. I'm really looking forward to it. That's on next on my list because that's where it all started. I mean, not all of it. You have other books before that, especially
right.
the one with signs, which was watching the signs from the universe, basically, which again is something that you have done throughout your whole life to be able to be
Right.
right here where you are. That book falling in your lap was not an accident.
No, and actually, I find that book fascinating today because uh, while I didn't use the language that I know today,
Hmm.
I used the signs and synchronicities and the flow with the universe. I realized today that that book is really a map of how we can navigate to our divine blueprint,
Hmm.
you know, because the universe does talk to us, wants us to be successful, shows us signs. And when life takes a turn, maybe we're on the wrong path and we just took a detour and we need to come back. But anyway, that book actually is kind of like, I didn't realize it at the time, but it is. It's about the divine blueprint and
All
navigating
the
through.
books are pieces of a puzzle, and that's what's so
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
It all
Yeah.
fills each other in a sense. Well, okay, so um, the ethereal autists, I have some questions because at this moment when you're meeting them and they're telling their story, and like I admitted, I have not read Unsuspected Heroes yet.
Right.
They are all having to like, are they all able to do telepathy together or with their caregivers, or what are you discovering when they ask you to write their story and you're like, whoa, I don't know, this is a lot, not of this world. What does that mean? What are they doing?
Well, okay. So the way that book started to write, getting their story was pretty a big task
Mm,
when you think about the fact that these are non-verbal autistics. You say ethereal autists. That's what we call them. They are those that are. Let me just back up.
yeah.
Humanity looks at autism as being on the spectrum, okay? And so we do have a spectrum, and there a spectrum of what I call pure autistics. Those people that are here, and they are serving in some capacity on humanity's spiritual evolution, okay? And so there are some that are called the ethereal autists, and those are those that we would look at and go, oh my God, they just aren't here. They don't speak. They might have physical challenges. They're on the high end of the autism spectrum. They're low functioning. When in fact, they are they're higher dimensional beings, and they're having experiences um, not in the physical, but in higher dimensions. They are the ones that will interact with the angels, the masters, galactic beings, as well as yes, other autistics, and yes, they are telepathic. Um, and then you have what I call the catalytic autists, which are on the opposite side of the spectrum, which might be identified as those with Asperger's. And these are people here, and they might know it or not. They're working on fulfilling their divine blueprint, and they're doing their work. And then there's this whole other realm of the bridge autists that kind of assist with bridging the ethereal autist with humanity. Uh, but essentially, these are silent heroes. Some of them are silent heroes. They're here to usher in what we call this shift in consciousness, the new earth. And I know I probably got off course,
No,
Kelly.
no, you didn't, because
Okay.
this is wonderful background because that answers the question people may ask. Talk about ethereal autists, but what about other autists? And
Yeah.
everyone has a role, just like we all, maybe on the spectrum or not, have a role.
Everyone.
And people often might look at an autist and a non-speaking, non-verbal, non-speaker and think they're not in there per se. And
Right.
that's just couldn't be further from the truth.
It's
But
right.
again, there's all different types and they have all different roles, and you are able to tell the story of these ethereal autists.
Yeah, but that's been a journey in itself, and that's where Shauna came in. When
Okay.
I first started, the only conversations. So I should say that the three autists that I initially worked with, they're all over the country. They were not
Mm.
in my backyard. So my communications with them that I trusted were through their parents. So I would, I would be in the 3D, and I would be reading books. And, I would read books, ask questions, and then I'd get answers through their parents. That was a really long process to get really what's going on with this whole shift in consciousness.
And we're
And
talking 2011, 2012, especially
yeah,
early on. The
yeah,
technology is not the same. We haven't hit 2020 yet, where Zoom is no big deal.
right.
Well, and sorry, just a point that we said they're all non-speakers, but they're speaking through their parents with facilitated communication. Is that correct?
Well, yes, and that's a really long process, and they don't
Mm.
like it.
Yeah. So
That's their least favorite
if
way.
people haven't listened to the telepathy tapes, that means they're
Yes.
either pointing through a stencil with each letter and their parents write down or mentally understand what they're saying, and then they're writing it down so they can answer your questions. All Some of them can type, or not the ones that you know.
The ones that I work with, they need facilitated communication. So their parent would facilitate that. And as we moved on, we do less of that, and more of what we would call channeling, what we would call telepathic, what we would call psychic communications. But we also confirm the information that comes in through facilitated. If that makes any sense, it's kind of like, okay, this is what I'm getting. This is what the universe is
And it would be through
sharing
their
with.
parents or through Shauna, who could receive the information telepathically from the non-speaker, and then they would, like you said, explain it to the autist, and then they would say yes or no through facilitate it, and or expand upon it, expound upon it.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And that was a journey. As I was mentioning, it was just a lot of time to get the information that I needed for these books. So, so what happened is I met Shauna back in 2016 on a trip to Peru. And when she learned about what I was doing with the autistic, she was really intrigued by it. So, and she also lived outside of Denver. So when I came back to the United States, the two of us connected. She wanted to know more information. I introduced her to our group. And the next thing I know, she is communicating with the autistics psychically. So that was really interesting. And then we were on a hike. It's a funny story. We're on a hike and we're coming down the mountain. And all of a sudden she goes, "Hey, Layla's here." And I'm looking around. No, Layla isn't there. And she goes, "No, no, she's talking to me. And she says X, Y, and Z." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm working on this section. I'm working on this book, and I'd like to get some clarity on it. Could you ask her, Layla, if she would be willing to help me with that?" And so she says, "Yeah." So she answers the questions as we're walking down the path. And then I said, "Well, ask Layla if she would be willing to work with us on the book." And she said, "Yes, except it has to get verified by Daniel." And I said, "Okay, I can do that." But the first thing I needed to do is email her mom, Layla's mom, and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Well, I learned that, yeah, she came back and she just said, she didn't tell me what you guys spoke about, but this is what she said without me asking a question. She said um, something to the extent that she did speak to Shauna and she understood her.
Oh, yeah, and that was
So,
so much easier to communicate with facilitated communication.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes. So that's how we started. And then as Shauna matured with her relationship with the autistics, uh, she started channeling, and she would start channeling the masters. Mother Mary would come in, Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, a lot of the Essenes, as well as some of the archangels. But, she started channeling Daniel, uh, and that was in Destination New Earth. And she also brought in what we call a collective consciousness, um, a single voice from the 16th dimension. We call its name is Syrian. And so she started channeling information from them. And to this day, she channels information from them, not daily, but quite often.
To me, the coolest part, I mean, as if all that's not cool enough already, that for those skeptics out there, there's a checks and balance system. So she might get information from Syrian, and then we can ask Daniel and fact check in a sense.
Right.
And I think there's a piece of it too that when you talk about resonance, it doesn't all have to, like, it could, some things could be true for some people and then things could be true for others. So the truth is a little fluid. That
It's a
word
lot.
feels like it's hard and dried and truth, right or wrong, right? But I don't think that's exactly the case, and you do a beautiful job of painting that picture. Similar, and we won't get into it yet because it gets deep with what the book talks about, what God is. It is everything and nothing, and so truth is a
Yeah.
similar paradox.
Yes, yes. I think you hit it beautifully. Our truths are different. It doesn't mean your truth is right and my truth or my truth is right. It's our truth. Each of us have our own truths, our own reality. And that's a concept in itself that's a little challenging to get our brains around.
Yeah, and if that is triggering for some, that's a good indication that you need to take a look at why that is,
Right.
because to me is that's the most beautiful thing about life, is that your truth could be different than mine, and it's a physical representation of us all being fractals of
Mhm.
the collective consciousness. I could say God, but as we've learned in the book, it's God, it is, and it isn't. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
well,
And
so
that
my
was
mother used to always say, I got to give her a big plug because I've never thought about it. I hadn't thought
Mhm.
about it in a while until just now. She used to tell me growing up, when you hit on a paradox, you get closer to the truth. And the fact that truth is a paradox is like, so
Exactly, exactly. It's yeah, it's kind of I'll have a conversation with someone and they'll say something and I'll go, "Well, that's not my truth." And they'll look at me like I have two heads and I'll like, "Yeah, maybe I do. I don't know."
that's fair. And on a more elementary level, which I always like to try to bring it down to the simplistic versions, because as a
Mhm.
parent, I'm trying to teach my kids some of these concepts. And, um, you know, learning it myself is sometimes tough enough, but to distill it down where they understand it's a whole nother
Mhm.
story. But
Mhm.
that whole, like, this not isn't my truth, it's almost like they understand a little bit about manifestation. And I'm if like, okay, cancel if they
Mhm.
say something that we don't want to actually be our truth.
Right,
It's good to feel into, is this something I want to happen, is this my truth, or even if it's happening to you, you can send it back.
right, right.
Okay, I want to get into um let's see, the dark forces of this. Just because I would like to believe it's all rainbows and unicorns, and hitting on the higher truths is love and light. But with light comes darkness,
Mhm.
and you can't have one without the other. And it
Mhm.
doesn't mean it has to be scary. But can you explain, once you're putting this information out there, the autists are relaying that they are starting to be attacked by dark forces and the ethereal, and what that actually means? Because when I heard that, it was a little triggering for me, because that's one of my fears going down this spiritual path, is that tricksters and entities that I don't want in my light
Mhm.
appear, and I don't even know it. But I think there's some safeguards to that, and I just want to hear your experience.
Boy, well, first, I guess the most important thing would never go to fear. Try not to go to fear. But yeah, this is a spiritual war. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's a spiritual war for humanity to realize something that's really unique, and that is they're the gods, right? So yes, there are these forces that have been in control for a really long time, like since the beginning of humanity, back in Lemuria. So yeah, if they're losing the game, they will, by losing control, they have a lot to lose. So they don't want to lose, right? So this is the spiritual war. As
And
far
sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but when you say they,
they
it's not necessarily the cabal that people think about, the 13 in power that are actually in physical bodies per se.
it can be.
It can be, and it could. And do they know that who they are?
I think they do. Yeah, yeah. And uh, yeah, I probably don't want to because I want to put light around this conversation so it doesn't get hijacked by using trigger words
Okay.
that could um, make this video go away. Does that make sense?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, because it could. But so yes, there are shades. Daniel calls them shades. I call them dark t-shirts. Doesn't matter. It's the same thing. That those controllers want to stay in control, and they've had better days, and so they're on their last hurrah. Okay, they want to. They're trying to shake up humanity to keep them in fear
Hmm.
so that we do what we always have done, which is what? Follow the establishment and remain, I guess, following the controllers. Well, what happened? You bring up about the autistics being attacked. That's probably always been the case, but it beefed up after the book Destination New Earth. And if it's okay, I'm gonna try to put that up.
Yes, please.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is Destination New Earth, and that
Beautiful.
came out at some point. And after that book was released, the autistics got substantially attacked. And I didn't, it was relayed to me about what was happening, and I just felt horrible about it. And it was Connie, Daniel's mother, who had put it in perspective. And she said, hey, if they knew it was going to happen, and if the book wasn't powerful enough, if the book wasn't powerful, it wouldn't have happened. So, during the launch of that book and subsequent right after it, they were being attacked quite a bit. And then when I was writing Gods in the Game, uh, it kind of lightened up. And I personally, I think that the book Gods in the Game was kind of a little bit of a decoy in a way, maybe potentially to, and it got attacked, and maybe it took the certain eyes off of some work that they were doing. But that's just a theory.
Well, and to be clear, attacked, again, I don't want to use the wrong language. It's energetic and it causes, is it dysregulated nervous system, pain? What does that look like?
For the autistics? Yeah, well, you have to understand that a lot of these autists, I mean, they are having experiences in dimensions that we don't see. And I mean, to me, I put my imagination on trying to figure out what
Hmm.
potentially could be going on. I think of things like the movie, what is it? Is it Doctor Strange? Where they're having these battles, right? In other dimensions. Who's to say that's probably what things like that are
And they
happening.
don't really communicate it and explain it because they don't feel it's of benefit to us to know.
Right, right. They don't know how to communicate it. It's hard for them to communicate it, first of all, unless you happen to have someone at your disposal that can communicate and say, hey, what's going on through channeling or psychic or and able to get it substantiated, what's going on. So they're having these experiences and how that manifests unfortunately is these parents. They don't understand what's going on with their children. And life becomes really a challenge for them. Daily activities are challenging, and they can have accidents, they can become destructive, they can you know they're just they're not there, they're elsewhere having other experiences.
So
And the
I like
parent
how you explained that their soul is not tethered to their body the same way that we are embodied. And
right.
can you talk about that?
Well, I think that Daniel puts it the best. He said to take the autistic um, soul and put it in the physical body, because that's what we're trying to do through
Mm-hmm.
this consciousness shift. We're trying to integrate our higher self and physicality. For the autistics to do it, it's like putting a jet engine on a go-kart. Doesn't work. It's they are such high vibrational beings, closer to that God consciousness than we are, that if they do come into the physicality, they'll fry their neural networks out,
Mm.
essentially.
And so
So
that's sort of how they present in a way
e-
for caregivers when you talk about the challenges.
exactly, exactly. So yes, that's among the challenges, and I apologize. I'm not sure I answered any of your questions
Oh, I
on that.
think you did. I think
Okay.
you did because um, instead of being worried about these things, we can also feel grateful that it's almost like a lightsaber Star Wars situation going on that we don't have to worry about in a different realm.
Yeah, well, we don't even know about it. That's
Hmm.
the thing. I mean, I think if we were to take a look at what we as humanity can do
Hmm.
to help the autistics, it's really very simple. We can honor them and recognize that they're not broken. They don't need to be fixed. They're just they're an entirely different species having a different experience than we are, and just to honor that and let them, let them live their lives. They're here because they love us, and they're here to help humanity go through what we call this evolutionary shift in consciousness, which is happening on the planet at the moment. And believe it or not, through all this chaos.
Well, can you tell me, just again from a practical, everyday standpoint, when um, the ethereal autists are listened to and they are supported,
Hmm.
does their outside demeanor change? Is there a shift these parents are seeing that once they understand how to communicate, either whether it's through channeling from a third party or the parent learns telepathy, do their behaviors start to settle down in their nervous system a little bit?
You hit it on the head, actually. Yeah, Connie has shared that when they are seen for who they are, they settle down. Now, is it temporarily? Yeah, probably, because they still have this other experience going on, but they do become more peaceful.
I
Uh,
mean, and I get it. My nervous system gets deregulated, and I have to reach into my toolbox to get it to settle down. Also, right? I mean, and it's almost teaching them some tools as they are listened to and understood, and it becomes a partnership instead of. I mean, can you imagine having high anxiety and feeling like you're on an island? I can't. I can't.
oh, I can imagine having high anxiety coming to speak to you, Kelly.
I can imagine. That's my point. I get it. I have anxiety,
Right,
but then I
right.
know how that everything's gonna, like, I have a support network, whether it's something that I rely on myself. And if I never felt seen or heard, that's just gonna ramp it all the way up. So that my empathy from the 3D aspect of who they are is immense.
Very. Wouldn't that be beautiful if everyone had that? They could even have a fraction of what you're experiencing for empathy.
Right? And that's
Yeah.
what I'm so thankful that you're telling this story, because this is just the tip of the iceberg for what is happening. You know what I mean? And so if people could just understand a fifth of it, I feel
Right.
like we could change the world. And
Right.
talking about what we can do to support. So yes, those things, have empathy, support, see them for who they are, but also how do we help the new earth as someone that's not on the spectrum?
Well, we're here to live our divine blueprint, to find out what we are to be doing and do it. Uh,
And it sounds so easy, right? And there's so
yeah,
many
no,
people out there.
there's nothing easy about that, of course. That's why we're here. We're here to essentially be who we are. And when we are, there's something that will happen. It's we start to, you talk about energy, right? We all vibrate at a certain frequency. And I think it was Syrian who put it beautifully that when each of us vibrates at our own specific note, we create a harmony, we create a symphony. And that's why we're here, to shift that consciousness. And, for every person that awakens, and there's, oh my God, there's so many different ways of awakening, right?
And you have that all outlined in the book, another plug, because I love how organized that is, and it helps wrap my right side of my brain, right, left, which one?
Right, left, some of it.
My brain around it, as opposed to some of these ideas are so big. You do a good job of bringing them in,
Thank
but
you.
yeah. So just taking those steps to awaken yourself, and I think maybe sometimes that is people's divine blueprint. It doesn't have to be to do something, it's to be awake for others
Actually,
to
we're
see what
here
that
to
looks like.
be.
Mm.
Yeah, we're here just to simply be. And that has a lot to do with, I mentioned that energy and vibration. That's the being part. We're here to be. And that happens when we do, what we are here to be, to do, right?
And I just think people maybe get hung up on, and I want to hear your opinion on this, that they're trying to find that thing to do when step
Right,
one is to just be.
right. We're human beings, not human doings.
Mm,
I'm sorry for that, but
I love it. Yeah, that's right.
but yes, that's what we are here, just simply to be. And as I mentioned, like when the life science, that was my journey. That book was my journey. And what I've learned is that we're our own compass. And
Hmm.
when we're heading towards that true north, our life becomes more magnificent, more magical, and things just flow. And when we're not heading in that direction, we will have some interference. And how we respond to that interference is part of our experience of being here, to experience. And, we get to choose because everyone is sovereign. We get to choose whether we want to be or not. We get to choose what side of the street we want to, or side of the tracks we want to play on. If we want to play on the light side, we can. We want to play on the dark side, we can. We are sovereign. We get to choose.
And I think that getting hung up, knowing that it's just our choice, listen to those signs, take each step, follow your highest joy, and let your emotions be your compass is your job. It's not to figure out what the thing is you have to do.
Oh, I think that's beautiful, Kelly. You said it. You said it perfectly. Yeah.
Um, I think we're having a little bit of internet issue. Oh, wait, there you are. You're cleared up. Okay, sorry. Sorry to interrupt, but I think it just corrected itself. Okay, I want to talk about, just a little light subject on, and you have to read the book to fully understand it. So don't want to give anything away, but the idea of God being a construct of man, and then an idea of God being all of us are God, and then the idea of God is everything and nothing. Can you help me distill that a little bit? And I know
Oh,
that's a big
geez.
question. I know, it's hard.
It really is.
Let's just touch on it. So it'll be like a teaser so that people, if they really want to dig deeper, they'll have to read the book.
They really, yeah. Okay, so one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So humanity actually is divine. We have a spark of life, and there's a spark of light, and all of humanity has a spark of life, and we get some of humanity can work with that spark of light, which is this process of awakening and ascension and whatever you want to call it, because there's all these different words. Uh, but, okay, so God is a construct. That came up through Syrian. Now, Daniel would say differently.
Okay.
But Daniel would talks about God, and he wanted to bring this book forth because he wanted to relay certain information about God. But the one thing he did say that was, I think, really important is it's a concept that we as humanity cannot, we're just starting to wrap our brains around, but Syrian will say we don't have the ability to wrap our brains around it. And they basically suggest that God is a construct that mankind created. And when you think about, and they've said mankind, not humankind, but mankind. But when you go back to the earlier sacred texts, it is patriarchal. It was, God was created by mankind. And it was created to define what we think of that highest ideal. But what Syrian says is we don't have the ability to really understand that to begin with. So that gets pretty deep in the book. But as I mentioned, humanity, which has that divinity within, we're on a path, a journey to remember, to not only remember as recall, but to remember with our higher self. That's what we're here to do. That's the journey of awakening, of reunifying with our higher self. And that's the journey we're on to try to achieve that higher consciousness, that shift to that new earth, if that makes any sense.
It does. And so that plays right back into what our divine blueprint purpose can segue us into, essentially. Like it's all connected.
It is all connected. And that's why we're here. That was the 3D game. We're here to achieve our divine blueprint. Okay.
And why do you think we forget in the first place?
It's part of the game. It was taken away from us, and it's part of the game. Can we? And it was part of the premise, okay, so humanity, what would you do if you were to remember who you are, that you are actually divine? Would you choose a path of light? Would you choose a path of dark? Either case, it's your choice because you're sovereign.
And you can create in your reality.
Right, right. So the question was, what would you, and so we've kind of gone away from the 3D game. We're going into a phase, there's a new game, the new game in town. So what are we going to create?
And
Even
I
if I
love
think,
that whole prospect of don't even worry about what the person next to you wants to create in their new earth. Your new earth is a separate, shall I say, creation.
exactly.
And it reminded me of when I've heard you describe it before. Is it What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams? And that's about the afterlife. But the
Right.
concept is that you create the afterlife that you want,
Mhm.
because you are the creator. And so him and his wife, I think, do that in tandem, and they get to meet up. But you could do that now.
That's why we're here. We're here to create heaven on earth. That's what the new earth is that heaven. I mean, I should say that's why we're here. Again, it's choice. That's
Hmm.
why I want to be. That's what I would like to do is,
Right. You don't
re-
have to come, but
yeah. In my reality, I want to create that heaven on earth.
and to be clear, it's not. I struggle with this. It's not a place we're going. It's not a. It's physically.
No, it's
It's
here.
a frequency shift.
Yeah, and it's here, and that's the interesting thing about the book Destination New Earth is it isn't about the new earth as in the future, its future state. It's about the fact that the new earth is actually here right now. And it is. It's energetic and we get to choose. And so, yes, Destination New Earth is about uh, what the new earth is today.
And to
And
conceptualize that, I feel like people, if these are new concepts and you're like, wait, what? I think one way to think of it is, has there been a time where you're in a state of high anxiety and things just, you're having one of those days. It's a Murphy's Law type day. But then you can take a minute, maybe meditate, maybe take a deep breath, and shift and decide, I'm not doing this anymore, and shift into a new frequency, state of mind, whatever you want to call it, and your reality transforms. It's true. It happens. It's real. And that's just a little tip of the iceberg microcosm of what this would be, looks like.
Hmm. I think you said it beautifully.
Okay,
I
that
think,
helps because sometimes it's like this new earth, you literally think of a round celestial earth, and that's not what we're talking about.
well, we aren't, but the reality is, each of us are creating our own new earth. We are shifting in and out of these dimensions. We're doing 3D, 4D, 5D, have a good day, 6D. And then next thing you know, you look at the market and you go, oh, crash. Oh, okay, 3D.
Yep. And that's okay.
Yeah,
It just being aware is half the game.
right, right. It is half the game. And I lost my point, where I was going with that.
So tend to interrupt, so that's my
No,
bad.
no, no. That's okay. That's okay. It's all good.
No, I think that's we've got a lot of food for thought here. And I want to wrap it up a little bit with we talked about next steps and how you can support. Are there new concepts and ideas you're toying with for any future books or anything else you want to talk about that you're exploring?
Well, I explore things every day. But you know, gosh, I've got so many different places I'd like to go, and I'm trying to figure out which is the
Well,
best
we
one.
have time for it all. So
Oh,
whatever
no,
you
no,
want to
no,
do.
we don't. But the reality is, I think, yes, I am working on new things, and because of my friendship with Shauna, we talk to Syrian and get messages from the Autists every day about what's happening in the world. And right now, if I don't watch the news, okay? So I learned really very early on that that the news just doesn't work for me. And every time I would watch it, it would be like, oh, that doesn't resonate as truth. And so I stopped watching it, and my world just got better. So I kind of like went on this spiritual diet. And what I mean by that is um, I would do things daily that support my spiritual path, which is things like I meditate a couple times a day. I try to do the mind, body, spirit thing, which when you think about it, if right now we are trying to integrate our higher self and spiritual in our physical form, we have this don't we have a responsibility of making our physical form as attractive as possible, maybe not physically, but attractive as possible, so that our higher self would want to come in. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I
And
will say I'm with you. My body's
okay.
woven the white flag on alcohol. And I
Right.
do feel like it is tied to ascension and that my body is saying, nope, not anymore. And that's not to say that I don't have a drink every now and then, but it is not agreeable. And it's not, I think that it's tied into, like you said, that our bodies need, and eating right, it makes a huge difference on your spiritual connection.
And those are little things that, I mean, you don't need to go sit on a mountain and meditate
Right.
for hours on day, but if you do the little things about cleaning house, we clean house for our neighbors when they
Hmm.
come over. Why aren't we cleaning house for our higher self? So yeah, little things like that. I do. I try to watch what I eat, organic when I can. Yes, I've limited my alcohol. And but the other thing is the influence of like TV and news. I'm really cautious about what I'm putting in my consciousness right now, because we're creators. We get to create things. So when sit down and I watch something that, is violent, I just feel really yucky after I've watched it. So I don't, yeah. So I
I
think
couldn't
it's
agree more. I think that's
okay.
also listening to your intuition on, is this good for me? Is it not?
Right, right. So little things in spirituality, I think it's all over the place. What you're feeding your mind, what are you reading? What are you watching? What are you ingesting into your body? And so yes,
And to be clear, we're also not saying things are bad and things are good. It's, again, individual residents, and there's super spiritual people who are tapped in, turned on, all the Abraham Hicks words that drink a bottle of wine a night. Who cares? But, that it might not be resonant for you.
Right. And I think it has a lot to do with why each of us are here.
Mm,
And if you're identifying as a light worker, and if you use that term, um, don't we have a responsibility to do what we're supposed to do, which is to stand in the light? Particularly right now, I was mentioning that we are, we're in the middle of this, a little bit of a chaotic time, I think. I don't watch the news, but I can feel the chaotic time. And I can see that chaos come into my life. And that was a conversation we had with Syrian last night. I was like, hey, what's going on? I know that when I am in my quiet space, I know that when I am at peace and peaceful, that the outside world is peaceful. That's my truth. And it's with this recent move, things have not been peaceful. And what Syrian suggested is we are, as in we talk about in Destination New Earth, where we've entered into a phase of the chaos. And some people are here to stand in their light during this chaos, so that we can add a sense of peace, so we can navigate the chaos easier, because we know that the systems are and will collapse. And when they do, we have two choices. We can go to fear and focus on, oh my God, um, or we can grab onto that, oh my God, this is part of the shift.
and be
We're
excited
heading
about it.
toward the new earth.
Hmm.
Can we focus on and put our energy and our love and be compassionate for what everybody's doing, stand in our light as we're going through this chaos, because that is what we need to do right now.
That's beautiful. I love that. Let's end on that note. Thank you so much, Alex. I am going to pull out my book, and there's plenty more I want to reference and read up on because there's a lot there, and I encourage everyone to check out your Amazon page or find your books, and you're a wealth of knowledge and love. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I just end with, if anybody wants to connect with me,
Yeah.
or Connie, Daniel, or Shauna, they can reach out through our website, which is my name, Alex, Alex, Marcoux, Marcous.com.
Perfect. And I'm going to put all your links in the show notes and make sure that you're able to be connected easily. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.